I only changed the color of my car, yet within hours my fence was smashed to pieces. Cops were sizing me up like a criminal, and I realized my own neighborhood was turning against me. All of that because I wrapped my Lamborghini from pearl white to satin black. Sounds insane, right? But that's how quickly my life spun out of control. I'd been planning it for weeks. My Lambo was my pride, my joy, my one real indulgence. Beautiful machine, perfect engineering, but the factory white always felt sterile, like I was driving around in a stormtrooper's helmet. I wanted something bold, something that felt like me. So I had it wrapped in this custom satin black, deep and liquid like shadows flowing over steel. The morning they delivered it back to my driveway, I couldn't stop staring. The lines looked sharper, the red brake calipers popped, the car looked menacing in the best way. I was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Then I heard it, the slam of a screen door, the shuffle of slippers fast and angry. I looked up and saw her, Brenda. The neighbor I'd only seen from a distance, always in some neon tracksuit this time, flamingo pink hair sprayed so stiff it could survive a hurricane. She stormed up to the edge of my property, hands on hips, eyes blazing like I'd just desecrated a church. I tried being polite. "Morning," I said. "What do you think of the new look?" "Big mistake." Her face twisted. "What did you do to my car?" At first I laughed because what else could I do? But she wasn't joking. She started yelling about how the white car was a beacon for the community, and now I'd ruined it, made it dark and intimidating. Then came the dagger. "You people always ruin everything." I froze. I'd heard prejudice before, but this was different. She wasn't just insulting the car, she was indicting me, my very right to exist here. And then she doubled down. She spun, stormed back to her house, and minutes later the roar of her ancient Lincoln Town Car echoed across the street. I watched in disbelief as she aimed that boat straight at my yard and floored it. Wood exploded as my picket fence shattered, splinters flying everywhere. My flowers crushed under her tires. She climbed out, phone to her ear, pointing at me, screaming, "He's threatening me! Send officers right now!" That's when the world tilted. She had just destroyed my property, yet she was painting herself as the victim. I pulled out my phone, started recording. By the time the police cruisers rolled in, lights flashing, I knew exactly how this would play. A hysterical, older white woman crying about a dangerous black man. I stood there, hands visible, calm as stone, while one officer smirked at me like he'd already decided the verdict. She spun her story perfectly. I had scared her, she accidentally hit the gas, poor thing. But I had my footage. I had the paperwork for the car, the wrap, the title, everything. Another officer, more level-headed, took the time to watch my video and review the documents. Finally, the truth couldn't be denied. Still, all I got was a case number and a shrug. They called it property damage. No arrest, no accountability for her false 911 call. She strutted back to her house with that smug little smile, leaving me with a broken fence and a sick feeling that justice had barely brushed against this situation. I thought that was the end of it. Patch the fence, call the insurance, move on. But the next day an envelope from the HOA was taped to my door. Violation notice. 2 of them. First, that the color of my car was not in harmony with the visual environment of the community. Second, that I was allegedly running a commercial car rental business out of my home because of the frequent presence of a high-value, modified vehicle. I stood there in my kitchen reading the letter, my hands shaking. This wasn't coincidence. Brenda had pulled the HOA into it. That's when the doubt crept in. Maybe I really was too flashy. Maybe people here didn't want me. Maybe I'd made a mistake moving in. Neighbors stopped waving, started looking down at their phones when I drove by. I felt like the villain in my own street. For a moment, I actually thought about selling the house, just leaving. I hated myself for even thinking it. But then I got a knock on the door. My retired neighbor Al, the quiet guy with the golden retriever. He looked me straight in the eye and said I saw it all. "She revved that engine and aimed for your fence. It was no accident." He gave me his number for a statement. Just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. And that's all it took. A witness. Proof. A reason to fight back. I called my lawyer buddy who introduced me to Sarah, a civil litigator with fire in her eyes and no patience for bullies. She didn't mince words. "We're going to shut down the HOA. We'll threaten to sue the board personally for harassment if they keep pushing. And Brenda will demand she pays for everything your fence, your flowers, emotional damages. If they resist, we take it to court." Letters went out. Real legal letters on heavy letterhead, not my little typed responses. And the effect was instant. The HOA folded like wet cardboard. They rescinded both violations, apologized in writing, and rewrote their policies to require evidence before acting on complaints. For the first time, the board feared me more than they feared her. One battle down. Brenda didn't back off. She escalated in petty ways. Staring me down every morning, snapping photos of my house, shouting at delivery drivers that I was under investigation. She hung giant, clanging wind chimes that sounded like a junkyard in a hurricane. She borrowed her sister's yappy terrier and left it outside all weekend just to bark at my yard. It was psychological warfare. And yet, the neighborhood started noticing. The young mom across the street posted on the community Facebook group about the noise. Others chimed in about the dog, the wind chimes. Brenda was no longer just my problem. She was everyone's headache. Still, the real battle was legal. Discovery depositions, all of it. I sat in the room while Sarah questioned Brenda under oath. At first, she played the frail widow. But when Sarah pressed, "Did you or did you not scream? What did you do to my car?" Brenda's mask cracked. She slipped, admitted things she shouldn't, contradicted herself, got caught in lie after lie. Watching her unravel, voice trembling, was like watching a dam break. By the end, her own lawyer looked ready to crawl under the table. That was the turning point. Her insurance company blinked. They sent over a settlement, full payment for a new fence, full landscaping repairs reimbursement for my security system, and a 5-figure payout for harassment and distress. All they wanted in return was confidentiality and no admission of guilt. I should have been thrilled. But reading the offer, my stomach turned. She'd get to buy her way out, never admit anything. She could still play victim to anyone who'd listen. I hesitated until Sarah told me, settlements aren't about moral victories. They're about closure. Take it or fight for another year. I asked for one condition, a personal apology letter. What I got was the most pathetic, insincere note I'd ever read. "I'm sorry if you were offended by our misunderstanding." No mention of the slurs, no mention of the false police report, no mention of the fence. It made my blood boil. But then I realized that letter was perfect. It exposed her exactly as she was entitled, delusional, incapable of real accountability. That was her confession written in her own hand. Weeks later, a moving truck pulled up to her house. Brenda was gone. The neighborhood exhaled, and I stood in my driveway looking at my car gleaming in the sun, no longer a source of anxiety, but of pride. The HOA, the cops, the neighbors. Brenda herself, they had all tried to make me feel small, but I hadn't backed down. In the end, the lesson was simple. When someone tries to strip away your dignity, the only answer is to stand your ground because the truth and persistence will outlast their lies.